You can unlock 2 exclusive emblems by watching and or subscribing to my live stream at twitch.tv/Mactics during the times and dates on screen. I'll see you there. Enjoy the video. Welcome to Will It Build, the series where I take your builds from my YouTube comments and Discord server and put them to the test to see if they are the real deal. If it's solid, then I'll gift you 1,000 silver, and if it's really something special, you'll be featured in a dedicated build video for your submitted build. So comment yours below so we can answer the question, will it build? Welcome to the first installment of Will It Build for episode Revenant in Destiny 2. Today we are build crafting around the brand new Hunter Exotic helmet, the Mask of Fealty, which I gotta say I wasn't too psyched about at first when I saw the exotic description and I saw the gameplay, but after playing with it, it's pretty spectacular, and I've got a lot of different weapon setups and a really good build setup that I think you guys are really gonna love. But first things first, you probably want to know... What? That's a... Nope, my... What? That's interesting. You probably want to know, how do you get it in the first place? How do I have it already? What's the best way to unlock it? And I've got a really good strategy for unlocking it. And the way you'll get it is you'll come over here to the tower and talk to Master Rahul, and you'll notice that if you come to the focused decoding section and you come to the 4th page, you'll be able to buy it straight up for an exotic engram and an exotic cipher, assuming that you have already ranked up and done the reset rank for Rahul at least once this episode. Now, the best way to reset the rank for Rahul is simply by turning engrams in. I'm pretty sure that's the only way. In fact, you'll get 100 reputation every time you turn in a prime engram, and I believe you'll get 75 reputation every time you turn in an exotic engram. However, if you focus decode an exotic engram right here on the 2nd page of advanced decryption, you'll actually get 250 reputation per exotic engram. Or if you want to maximize your rep gains with exotic engrams, if you come to the 3rd page precision decryption and you turn in an exotic engram in conjunction with 2 ascendant shards and 60,000 glimmer, you'll get 500 reputation, and you'll get it ranked up super quickly. Now, if you need exotic engrams to be able to decode to fuel this, so you can get it just like that, way number 1 is to spam the daily legend lost sector to get exotic engrams. Or way number 2, if you played last season in Season Echoes and you left some things to claim in your season pass, you didn't claim everything, you can come to bungie.net, go to Destiny 2, log into your account, and then click on the little profile picture up here on the top, and then click on Season Pass Progress. Once it loads, you'll notice up in the top, you'll have previous season, and you'll be able to pull all of the materials and exotic engrams and exotic ciphers that you earned from last season that you didn't actually redeem. So you can claim your exotic engrams, you can claim exotic shards, anything you had left over, so that you can fuel all this decryption, so that you can eventually get that rank up, or hopefully get it, you know, just like that, like I did, and all in one go. And then you'll be able to do the reset ranks. You'll claim all this. You'll claim the exotic cipher. That'll reset your rank. And then you'll be able to come over here, come to page 4, and then buy the Mask of Fealty or the Warlock exotic or the Titan exotic. As far as the build itself, what does this mask even do in the first place? Withering Blade hits and bounces create a small stasis crystal and refund a portion of melee energy. Using Withering Blade to shatter crystals or frozen targets releases a spread of Withering Blades. I do want to note that the frozen targets portion right here is bugged at the current moment, and it's not consistently working. In the gameplay, you'll notice I'm kind of more so using this build to throw throw Withering Blades at crystals. Even though it's bugged at the current moment, Bungie said that they're looking to fix it in about 3 weeks. This exotic is still ridiculously good and is very destructive and doing really solid. So it's just going to get even better once they bug fix this. Now, we are pairing this mask up with the Stasis subclass. We're not going with Prismatic because, in my opinion, it just has much better synergies when we link it with the Stasis subclass. Looking at our stats, we really want to get as high mobility as possible while maintaining max resilience. We then also want to get as high of discipline as possible. As far as our subclass goes, Silence and Squall obviously our only option here. Go in Gambler's Dodge for the class ability, obviously, so we can dodge next to things and get a melee charge back to fuel our Withering Blades. And then we're going Duskfield Grenade. You might think that you want to go Glacier Grenade because more crystals equals better, but we're going Duskfield Grenade because we're also rocking and rolling with Touch of Winter, where we actually get a stasis crystal inside of our Duskfield Grenade whenever we throw it. And this is what I like to call the primer of the build, if that makes sense. Because if you recall, when I read the description of Mask of Fealty, Withering Blade hits and bounces create a small stasis crystal, meaning that the idea is that you're basically going to throw your Touch of Winter Dustfield Grenade, it's going to spawn the stasis crystal, then you're going to throw a shuriken at that stasis crystal, it's going to blow it up, do a bunch of damage, and send a bunch of other shurikens flying out, but then it's also going to make more stasis crystals because those shurikens are going to generate small stasis crystals, so it loops and loops and loops. So you only really need one small crystal. You don't need the whole glacier grenade wall. And Dustfield Grenades is just generally nicer in endgame content. It's nicer when it comes to like locking down areas. It's just a really, really solid grenade. We're also going with Grim Harvest, where defeating slowed or frozen targets creates stasis shards, and those stasis shards are all obviously going to give us melee energy to fuel our Withering Blade spam. Additionally, while Grim Harvest is equipped, anytime we pick up a stasis shard, it's going to give us stacks of frost armor, so we're going to get some survivability in the form of damage resistance as well. As far as our fragments go, we have fissures, obviously, so that anytime we destroy a stasis crystal or a frozen target, increase size bursts and increase damage. We're going with refraction, so that when we defeat slowed or frozen targets, which is basically going to be everything, it's going to give us class ability energy, so we can spam Gambler's Dodge more, get more Withering Blades, and spam more Withering Blades. We've then got Whisper of Shards, so that anytime we shatter a stasis crystal, we're going to get a significantly increased grenade recharge rate, so that we can throw more Dustfield Grenades. Like I said, that's our primer. It's going to have a crystal in it, so it's just going to be easy to continue that loop of spamming the Withering Blades at that additional crystal. We then have Whisper of Conduction, so that all of the nearby stasis shards that we create are just going to automatically track to us when we get nearby. Also gives us 10 resilience and 10 intellect bump, which is really, really nice. And then we have the Whisper of Chains. We're defeating targets while we have frost armor, which again, we'll get it very easily from Grim Harvest. Defeating targets while we have frost armor has a chance to create a stasis shard, so these two kind of work hand in hand back and forth. Now, as far as armor mods go, we're really, really focusing on ability regeneration. Up on the mask, we're going with a siphon mod of the element of whatever our current primary weapon is. This is going to change a little bit as I show you some of the different weapon options for this build. And then I'm just going with double dynamo. You do have a little bit of freedom when it comes here. I'm just going double dynamo so I can spam more silence and squalls. You might think that you want to go with hands-on, where you gain bonus super energy on melee kills, but I found that if you throw a shuriken at a stasis crystal and then it blows up the stasis crystal and then more Withering Blades come out of it, that either doesn't count as melee damage, or it's very inconsistent when it comes to proccing like the final blows and proccing and actually killing enemies and registering as melee damage or something of that nature. I tested it in a law sector for like 20 minutes and I was barely creating orbs. I was testing it specifically with heavy-handed, so that's why I like the dynamo angle instead. On the arms, we're focusing exclusively on ability regeneration, so we got an impact induction for a grenade cooldown whenever we land a Withering Blade. We've got momentum transfer, so that anytime we do grenade damage, we get melee energy back, which Dustfield does do damage. Very, very little, but it does like 1 damage or 2 damage, which is enough to proc momentum transfer. And then bolstering detonation, so that our same Dustfield is going to regenerate our class ability, so we can spam our class ability a bit more. Go with an elemental charge, so we get armor charge stacks from picking up those stasis shards, and stacks on stacks, so we double up on stacks, so we get a ton of armor charge whenever we pick up stasis shards. And then on the class item, those armor charge stacks are fueled into utility kickstart, so we can dodge as much as humanly possible. We got a Reaper, so we got orb generation whenever we get a weapon final blow after we dodge, and then bomber, just for a little bit extra grenade energy. I've got a ton of different weapon options when it comes to this build. A lot of different things can work. And frankly, this build can work completely fine on its own, even if you don't have specific weapon pairings. But I'm going to show you some weapon pairings that I have found to be really, really good. We're going to go ahead and launch into the brand new Onslaught map. We have 3 brand new Onslaught maps. We're going to launch into one of them and answer that question. Will it build? Okay, so as you can see here, whenever I have a stasis crystal, I throw a shuriken at it. It blows up and it creates an extra 3 crystals. So that's why I was talking about, we basically always have our grenade up, because like I said, every single time we blow up a crystal, we get that significantly increased grenade energy from our fragment. So the idea is we throw our grenade, Touch of Winter gives us the initial crystal, throw a shuriken at the crystal, that does a blast of stasis damage and throws out all the additional shurikens thanks to our mask, and then we can blow up those crystals to get significantly increased grenade regeneration, and then we can throw another grenade out there and do it again. Now, as you can see, I'm out of melee energy. That's where Gambler's Dodge comes in. That's where some of our other buffs, where we're going to be getting a lot of stasis shards, comes in. Anytime we defeat a slowed or frozen enemy, they're going to generate shards. We're going to have a ton of melee energy going, as you'll see as we get going. At the current moment, in terms of weaponry, I'm using a legendary weapon with headstone, which I think is going to be weapon option number 1. This is definitely the most versatile option because it keeps your exotic slot open. So I think this is going to be nice because it gives you another way to set up your initial crystal, aka your primer, if that makes sense, other than your Dustfield grenade. So obviously I could do that most of the time, but in any situation where I don't already have a crystal or I don't already have Dustfield grenade up, it's nice to have the headstone weapon because you can just get a quick headshot kill. Well, let me find an enemy that I can actually get a headshot kill on. Just find an enemy real quick, get a headshot kill, makes the crystal, throw the shuriken at the crystal, easy as that. So this is kind of weapon option number 1, and like I said, I like this one a lot because it's the only weapon option. This is specifically the new seasonal hand cannon. It's called like Exuvier or something like that. But obviously you can do any legendary weapon that has headstone. And then that allows you to open up your exotic armor your exotic weapon slot for absolutely whatever you want. Doesn't really matter. Unstoppable champion. Obviously we freeze unstoppable champions. And so here's what I meant with that like recursive loop where throw the dust field grenade, throw the shuriken at it, shuriken blows up, additional shurikens, those create extra stasis crystals, can throw those shurikens at those stasis crystals. And a big part of this build right here as well is it's that Whisper of Refraction, I believe it was called, was one of our fragments. Consistently getting class ability energy back from defeating all of these slowed targets or frozen targets is keeping our Gambler's Dodge up very, very frequently, so we can always be using it next to an enemy to make sure that we're getting those Withering Blades back consistently. That's another reason the Dust Field feels so nice, is because the Dust Field is going to freeze and slow every single thing around it, so you're just going to get a ludicrous amount of class ability energy back all the time, thanks to the fact that you're always going to be throwing your grenade because you have it up so frequently, thanks to your other fragments. This build, like, it just kind of like, it works together really well in a lot of areas. While we're in this little cooldown period, I want to take the time to talk about the artifact as well. None of these are necessary in any capacity, but they do help out a little bit. Specifically, I really, really like things like, if you're using a stasis weapon, one with Frost, where while Frost Armor is active, stasis weapons gain increased reload speed. Crystalline Converter, as you gather stasis shards, you get stacks of Crystalline Converter, and your next powered stasis melee hit, aka your shuriken, is going to create stasis crystals, so kind of litters the field with some bonus crystals. One of the strongest ones, in my opinion, Hail the Storm. Shattering stasis crystals releases shards of ice that damage and slow targets, is going to be super, super good. And then I don't have this final column unlocked, but I would probably go with Brain Freeze, where frozen combatants become surrounded by chilling fog, which slows combatants that aren't slowed already. And then probably Served Cold, where picking up a stasis shard grants us class ability energy that's going to help out with our refraction to make sure our Gambler's dodges up as frequently as possible, even more so. It's really, really easy to maintain your ability loops with this. You don't really have to execute anything too perfectly. Sometimes builds require you to be like really on the money when it comes to making sure you land all your abilities perfectly, making sure your ability rotations are perfect. This one just kind of, I mean, you get to mindlessly spam things for the most part, as long as you're killing stasis crystals, because as long as you're killing stasis crystals, that means that you're always proccing the stasis fragment that's going to regenerate all that grenade energy, which means you always have your dust field grenade up. You always have a way to create an initial stasis crystal. You're always slowing everything. That's going to give you class ability energy. So it's really not half bad. So now I think we're going to take the time. We're going to switch up to our first exotic weapon option here. And again, your energy and heavy, they really, it's really world's your oyster. You can use whatever you want. That's how this build is so good, just with the ability and mod synergies at base. But the first exotic weapon we're going to try out is Wicked Implement, which is similar to the legendary option in the sense that it has headstone, but Wicked Implement's going to bring some additional perks to the party, right? Specifically, creeping attrition. When we rapidly land precision hits, we're going to gain the creeping attrition buff so that we slow enemy targets. That's going to fuel our refraction a little bit more and our Grim Harvest a little bit more. We're gonna get more shards. And then we've also got Tithing Harvest, where while creeping attrition is active, destroying stasis crystals or landing precision final blows creates a stasis shard. I don't know if it's bugged or if the perk description is just inaccurate, but you actually don't have to have creeping attrition to generate a stasis shard from destroying the crystal. As you can see right there, I definitely don't have creeping attrition in my lower left above the weapon, and anytime I destroy a stasis crystal, it's going to make a shard for me. That's any shard. So you really are you're going to create a ludicrous amount of stasis shards, and since they're created from the weapon destroying the stasis crystal, they're just automatically going to float towards you, overflow your magazine. It's just super easy to get them. The one area where this weapon's going to maybe struggle a little bit is in like fast-paced content where you're having a lot of enemies run at you, such as something like Onslaught, where we're in right now. But if you look to content like Grandmasters and things of that nature, I think this weapon is going to be absolutely peak with this build in Grandmasters because it's a scout rifle, so you get to be long range. It can stun 2 types of champions intrinsically because of the fact that it can slow enemies, which means it can eventually freeze them. So it's going to be able to intrinsically stun overload champions without any seasonal mods, and it's going to be able to intrinsically stun unstoppable champions without any seasonal mods. Wicked Implement, of course, yes, as you guys are saying in the live stream, is also just very solid this season because of its synergies with the seasonal artifact mods as well. Without a doubt. By the way, it can also stun barrier champions from anti-barrier scout artifact. Wait, is there anti-barrier scout on the artifact this season? Oh my god. So you can use Wicked Implement for literally every single Grandmaster Nightfall this entire season because you can just equip anti-barrier scout and that'll make the scout rifle itself intrinsically have anti-barrier shots on every single bullet that it fires. You can stun overload champions once you get the creeping attrition buff. It's going to apply slow to targets. And then obviously if you can apply slow to targets, you can also eventually freeze them, which is going to stun unstoppable champions. So Wicked Implement solo itself can stun all 3 champions. Oh, wait a minute. No, never mind. No, it's not. It doesn't have the barrier icon right now. So never mind. No, I guess Bungie must have this weapon coded to be like an overload specific weapon because it knows it can get slow, which means it's not able to inherit the properties of... Or it's bugged. That or it's bugged. I don't know. All right, I think next we're going to go to Verglass Curve, which I think is going to be a little bit overkill when it comes to its synergies with this build. You might think that's absolute perfection because, hey, anything that makes stasis crystals is going to make this build absolutely fantastic. When it comes to crystal production, your grenade plus the intrinsic benefits of your helmet bestowing the ability to create crystals with your shurikens, adding on being able to create crystals with this, it just seems a little bit overkill. That's not to say that it's useless or anything like that. It's still going to be good. I feel that there's better options. I feel like going with a legendary with headstone to open up your exotic slot is going to be a little bit better. And it's actually bugged at the current moment. It's not even as good as it normally would be. You know what I'm just now realizing that I think makes this thing even better? Is I think if enemies are super tightly packed, you're guaranteed to basically just blow them all up when you throw a shuriken at a stasis crystal. Because if you throw a shuriken at the stasis crystal is going to blow up, doing the shatter damage. And then it's obviously going to send out additional shurikens to make additional crystals. But I think what's going to happen in certain occasions is, I'm going to try to explain this. It's going to be a little wonky to explain. But I think what's going to happen in certain situations is if you throw a shuriken at here, it's going to do the shatter damage, and it's going to freeze nearby targets, and it's going to send out the additional shurikens to create additional crystals. But the thing is, if that shatter freezes other targets, and then the damage, the follow-up damage from the shatter also causes those frozen targets to also shatter, then the shattering of those frozen targets is then going to shatter the additional stasis crystals that were made by the withering blades that spawned off of the initial crystal shatter. Is this exotic better with pure stasis build, or could it be good with prismatic? I think you really, really want it with a pure stasis build, because a lot of fragments that this is contingent on and reliant on is things like fissures to increase the damage and the size of the burst. Things like chains so that you get significantly increased grenade regeneration so you can spam dust fields with the crystal inside it with Touch of Winter. And things like refraction so that you're defeating a bunch of slowed and frozen enemies to spam class ability energy regain so you can get a bunch of withering blades back. Things like Grim Harvest where you get stasis shards to give you melee energy anytime you defeat slowed and frozen targets. Like there's a lot of things that are very specific to the stasis kit that the prismatic kit does not have replicas of that are pretty crucial for the synergy of this build. For our next weapon pick, if you want to go absolutely ballistic with melee energy, is going to be Monte Carlo. This is what you're going to rock and roll with. Speaking of which, this is the time where we're going to come over here and we're going to change up some of our mods a little bit. So like we're going to have to modify some things because we want a kinetic siphon specifically, since Monte Carlo of course is not a stasis weapon. And then you can go ahead and pair whatever else you want in here. Could do like double kinetic siphon to increase the potency of the orbs with one dynamo. But this is what you run when you just don't want to even think about how many shurikens you're firing off. Because, oh no, I'm out of shurikens. So I'll just go ahead and spray with the Monte Carlo, get shuriken energy back. There's my dodge. Crystal. And boom, all my abilities are full. Throw more of that. Throw more of that. This is when you kind of want to forsake the ability loops. I think this is overall a bit worse than the Wicked Implement and Headstone variants. However, this is the option that you go when you want to turn your brain off. You don't want to think about rotations in any capacity. And you just want to point your gun at the enemies, fire it, not even have to look at the bottom left at your ability bar. It's like, do I have ability energy left? Do I need to use my dodge right now? Do I need to use my grenade? Nope, I'm just going to spray at everything with Monte Carlo and spam the melee button, and there's going to be melees there no matter what. Alrighty. Now, the final weapon option is going to be our only special weapon option up here, and that's going to be the Agger's Scepter. That, of course, means we're going to be putting on a primary ammo weapon down here, and we can go ahead and go back to our Harmonic Siphon. This one, you could probably go ahead and throw in a Siphon to match your primary ammo element, or you could go ahead and stick with the double dynamo. Now, full disclosure, here, obviously going to have synergy where final blows with this weapon are going to generate a slowing burst. That's going to have synergy with our refraction. That's going to have synergy with our Grim Harvest. And it's probably going to be pretty good. However, full disclosure, this is the only weapon that I have not yet tested. So we're about to learn together whether this weapon is actually going to be good or not for this build. So let's get our full super meter, Dust Field, and then we'll go ahead and turn on the Freezy laser. Fire a shuriken out. Yeah, look at our class ability. Our class ability plus our shurikens. We're gonna throw that there. Throw one at there. Throw one. Oops. Blow that up. Oh. Throw another at you. Oh my god. Yeah, he's having a tough time. A subjugator. Ugh. It's probably fine. Ah! Salvation's Grip could be an option here. However, I feel like Salvation is going to fall into the same category as Verglass Curve, where it's like, yes, it's nice that you can generate a ton of stasis crystals, but we can already generate a ton of stasis crystals. If the argument is like, hey, this is so good because of, you know, this weapon is such a good option because of how many stasis crystals it can generate, I put a little bit more stock in the weapons that can do things beyond generating stasis crystals. Things that have, like, slowing and freezing bursts, like Agger's Scepter. Things that generate a stasis shard on every single crystal that you're blowing up, like Wicked Implement. Because, as we just showed with the grenade throw and the shurikens, we're already generating a ridiculous amount of stasis shards. Or, sorry, stasis crystals. I feel like investing in a weapon whose sole purpose is to generate stasis crystals, I'm not saying it's useless, it feels like it's trying to fill a gap that's already filled. What about the new exotic grenade launcher? So the new exotic grenade launcher, despite being a stasis damage type and looking very stasis-y, does not actually have any stasis synergies in any capacity. If you look at all its perks, it generates ammo and it fires a spike, right? That doesn't actually do anything that legitimately synergizes with the stasis subclass, right? It doesn't create shards, it doesn't create crystals, it doesn't slow enemies, it doesn't freeze enemies. The new grenade launcher is not really a stasis functionality weapon, it's much more of a stasis themed weapon, if that makes sense. That's not to say that it's not good and that you can't use it with this build, but it's not adding anything to the loops that we're trying to achieve when we're using this build. So these are my initial findings for some very, very strong builds with the new Mask of Fealty. I'll probably make a dedicated build video for this exotic once the bug regarding the fact that the shurikens aren't spreading on frozen targets being hit with Withering Blades. Once that gets fixed, I'll probably make a dedicated build video for this. Also gives me time to do some more research to find like what I consider to be the very definitive best mod setup and best weapon setup for this. This is obviously day 1 of the expansion, or by the time you are watching this might be day 2. So these are just my initial findings. I wanted to put something out for you guys. One, because I haven't been making tons of content recently, since there hasn't been new content being added to the game. Now that we have new content, I'll of course be making more builds, dungeon guides, solo flawless guides, more will it builds, things of that nature, since we have stuff to do at the current moment. I hope you all enjoyed this one. Please make sure you like and subscribe if you want to see future build videos, a dedicated build video for this, or a video in this same format, but for the new Titan or Warlock exotic armor pieces. Also plan to do videos on some other exotics that got updated. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, have a great day.